Hey guys, so just a quick message before the video starts. I actually uploaded this video just a couple days ago, but due to some copyright issues, it had to be taken down. So I fixed it, and next week you guys are going to be getting a brand new video. But whether you've watched this video or not, please like it and comment below to help me out, because this time I'm going to really need the boost. And I appreciate all the love as we're almost at 100,000 subscribers.
That was fighting for gay rights, and people were killed.
Nobody was killed at Stonewall.
Nobody was killed?
This is a picture of Katya and Kennedy Davenport at a premiere party in 2015, reacting for the first time to season 7 episode 1. An image that reflects the excitement and pure joy that the queens had for something that was already changing their lives forever. Little did they know the next year would be a really rocky road for them as a cast, with a season that didn't get a very good reception from the fanbase. But before we start, if you're hunting for a killer Black Friday or Cyber Monday deal, you need to check out Raycon's everyday earbuds. These things are a total game changer, and their newest model, what a chef's kiss. Here's why they're my go-to. 32 hours of battery life. Yeah, you heard that right. I'm editing videos, running errands, or zoning out to podcasts for days before I even think about charging them. And the multi-point connectivity? Lifesaver. I can switch seamlessly between my laptop and phone. No messing around with settings or reconnecting. But wait, my favorite feature has to be the active noise cancellation. Whether I'm dodging distractions while working or surviving a long flight, these block out everything I don't want to hear. And with the price, it's basically a steal. Raycon's everyday earbuds are half the price of those big name brands. Yet here's the kicker. Right now, you can snag them for up to 30% off site-wide. Plus, you can also get your own protective case that comes in a variety of different sleek and perfect designs. So if you've been thinking about upgrading your earbuds, now's the time. Head to buyraycon.com/greengay and grab yours with up to 30% off site-wide by clicking the link in the description. Trust me, it's worth the investment. Now, let's begin. People hated season 7 because it was kind of a turning point for the show. In hindsight, it was the beginning of a new era. Starting with season 7, it was noticeable how drama was not as much of a predominant force among the cast, since queens were starting to be a lot more concerned with how fans would perceive them afterwards. We also got a brand new Untucked format that got a pretty mixed reception from viewers. On one hand, people loved that it came across as more genuine to see the queens sort of just hang out together backstage, while others viewed it as a step down from past seasons. There was also the fact that they were the ones that had to follow up season 6, that to this day holds up as one of the best additions from the series. Although, what exactly did it mean? The best way to describe season 7 is that the whole season was a constant swing between hot and cold. Our first introduction to these queens is through a promo theme that came across as really basic. It was especially disappointing because the precedent that they had been building since season 4 was that the concepts for what we'd be getting in these trailers would be more avant-garde as time went by. Yet this time they decided to go minimalistic. The cast in itself was predominantly filled with queens who excelled in their fashion presentations, in a season where the majority of the challenges were comedy based, naturally resulting in most of them struggling. What made it worse is that going into the first episode, things were already off to a bad start when the production team decided that it'd be a good idea to have the runway category be what each queen envisioned their drag character to look like if they were naked, resulting in most of these looks getting blurred due to not being allowed to show nudity on television. Yet it wasn't just that. The critiques for the episodes were also sort of baffling, as Sasha Belle, aka Frisbee Jenkins, rightfully placed in the bottom 3, but somehow escaped lip-syncing for her life, even though she fully missed the whole concept of an already bad runway category. Another component that's important to note from this premiere was the way it was particularly more heartbreaking than any other we had seen before. The Untucked for season 7 episode 1 was really jarring to see at the time. Due to losing the backing of some sponsorships, Untucked's format had officially undergone its first major change. So, since they weren't able to have Untucked be picked up by any network, they opted to still produce Untucked, only as a much lower budget version that would be filmed literally in one of the backstage areas of the soundstage. I mean, it was sort of surreal to be able to see the way some parts of the set look when you're not seeing it from one set angle that we see on the main episodes. The episodes themselves would be uploaded to the WoW Presents YouTube channel the morning after each respective episode aired. Yet, there was something that stuck out at the end of it, because we fully see Tempest DuJour walk off the stage as RuPaul tells her to sashay away. Tempest DuJour's elimination is the first time that we as an audience got to see more in-depth footage of what it was like for a queen to get eliminated. And boy was it rough. Although that wasn't even the worst part. We then find out that when Ru tells the rest of the queens to dance as a celebration for making it to the next week, is something that's done mere seconds after the eliminated queen walks off. Meaning that yes, every eliminated queen hears everyone else partying on stage while their dreams have been completely crushed. We saw as this queen, who was the oldest one in the group, came in and was immediately made fun of for her age. Ultimately, despite trying to prove herself, the worst thing possible could happen, as she'd end up being the first queen to go home. On a much larger scale, Untucked became a visual marker of a shift in production for the series, leaving some fans disappointed by the way it would be covered moving forward, while others felt that the change in tone allowed viewers to immerse themselves even more with the queen's discussions. But as much as this edition of Untucked was a huge contrast to its predecessors, it wasn't the driving force behind the terrible reception of season 7. So then, when exactly did things start to fall apart? The fan reception at first wasn't all that critical about it. Like every year, people were excited for the incoming fresh amount of new content that we'd be able to watch. Episode 2, for instance, features Glamazonian Airways, one of the best produced songs, concept, and rusical to take place, while also being a perfect representation for why people were so drawn to the series. Although, like I mentioned before, there was a constant hot and cold aspects, because we'd get amazing challenges like these, only for things to completely fall off the rails super quick. One of the biggest pieces of evidence is how we go from Glamazonian Airways to the Shakespeare acting challenge that was considered one of the worst episodes of the franchise up until that point, featuring RuPaul scolding the girls while on the main stage because he didn't want to hear any excuses for why they couldn't properly prepare for their group skit. Even Jasmine Masters almost gives up completely this episode. It was really a prime example that just because queens can make a challenge entertaining doesn't mean that they can do with just anything you throw at them. That being said, while perhaps the challenges weren't the best, another factor for the terrible reception came from the judging decisions that we'd see in the weeks ahead. Trixie's elimination on episode 4 put a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. She lip-synced against Pearl to Dreaming by Blondie. Yet, despite Trixie's performance being arguably more entertaining and well presented, Ru shockingly announced that Pearl had won, meaning Trixie was the 4th queen to be eliminated from the season. This would end up jumpstarting the hashtag Justice for Trixie movement, since Trixie, despite not doing very well within the challenges, had made a pretty good impression with the general fanbase. Along with that, her bottom 2 placement in itself wasn't that justified, as it was believed that Candy Ho should have been up for elimination alongside Pearl. What made Trixie's demise such an influential part of the season was how, for the most part, the general fanbase tended to always agree with what transpired in the competition. Yes, there was some queens that they felt were pushed by production or horrible decisions made in terms of eliminations, challenges, runways, etc. But overall, you came out of each season more or less having an okay outlook from it. But this time around, we got some really bizarre judging moments that was pretty difficult to defend, which ties into another underlying issue, which is how this time around, production really was trying to push certain storylines in a certain direction. The only issue was that a good portion of these queens weren't able to play along with them. For example, we know now, thanks to Ru's podcast, that she openly admitted to having kept Pearl around because Pearl was a really cute boy out of drag, knowing that it would directly translate into viewers at home loving her. What's interesting though is that despite clearly having the backing of production, Pearl really didn't play along properly. Here's why. On episode 5, right after she questionably won her lip sync against Trixie, she gets paired with Max for the Despy Awards challenge. Listen, we all know that they both go on to win the challenge, allowing Pearl to completely redeem herself in front of the judges, earning her first challenge win. But like, none of this felt earned at all. Like, when they're working on what they're gonna say in the workroom, Ru does her one-on-one and ends up having a confrontation with Pearl, where Pearl claps back at Ru, asking her if there's something on her face. Ru said in her podcast that in that moment, she pretty much wanted to kick Pearl out of the show. Instead, Pearl ends up walking out of the workroom shortly after the incident, leaving Max alone. Later on in Untucked, we find out that even though Pearl and Max did a great job in the challenge, every single one of those jokes were written by Max, because Pearl was gone from the workroom for a very long time, plus not being able to be in the proper headspace to add anything of value. This is why, to me, when they're both announced as the winner of the challenge, it felt weirdly undeserved. I mean, Max definitely deserved it, but moving forward, this is played up as Pearl's big breakthrough moment in the competition, and inadvertently kind of replaces Max because of it. By the time Max earns her first placement in the bottom 2 after flopping the snatch game, she had a total of 2 challenge wins. Yet despite this, she wasn't offered the same kind of grace queens like Pearl got. So then, yes, there was a lot of variables at this point for why season 7 wasn't getting the best reception. That being said, there was some positive things that they did manage to deliver, which deserves acknowledgement in this video too. To start off, episode 1 having a total of 3 different runways plus their entrance look was quite revolutionary in terms of format jumps. Up until then, their first eliminations were always brutal to see. But the fact that this time around around, the queen was able to showcase 2 more additional looks than what we would have otherwise been able to see, did help soften the blow just a little bit. It was like we were getting a much deeper dive into the new batch of queens within just the first week, followed by Glamazonian Airways impressing us, and even the Thespia Awards was a really great moment in this season that was ahead of its time. Plus, when it came to the Snatch Game, nobody talks about just how genuinely revolutionary it was for Kennedy to choose to do a man for his Snatch Game character. It could have easily resulted in the judges not getting it and putting her in the bottom. Maybe if that happened, nobody would have done a male character for a while longer. Her succeeding opened the doors for a whole new genre of options that future contestants could have for their Snatch Games. All of this brings us to season 7, episode 8. The makeover brought back all the eliminated queens to reunite with the rest of the cast, and each pair had to come up with their own conjoined twins look. The decision to have the eliminated queens come back for the makeover challenge was by a landslide the single best idea of season 7, and I always felt that they should have done it every year from that point forward. I tend to normally hate the makeover challenge because most of the time it just kind of looks like the queens are pretending to care about these new people that just walked into the workroom, as they kind of force us as viewers to get to know the stories of these strangers that aren't even a part of the competition. But the eliminated queens returning made it so much better because we already knew who these people were. Plus, there was chemistry already there. But best part of all, it made the return of Trixie Mattel feel 100% earned. Like, it wasn't just some random queen joining the competition again, it was the queen who was paired with the winner of the challenge. What's more is that even the failures of this episode seemed like a success. The lip sync between Ginger Minj and Jaden Dior Fierce, who were forced to do it with their partners still attached to their outfit, resulted in what for a long time became known as the most chaotic yet comedic lip sync from the franchise. Coincidentally, the first 2 queens eliminated from this season were in the bottom 2, with Tempest DuJour once again going home. This means that Tempest never got to experience what it was like to stand in the back of the stage. By the time we get to the top 6 of the season, Trixie makes history as the first returning queen to make it past at least 1 episode. Yet her time was counted, because even though she didn't do that bad of a job in the dancing challenge, the judges based their decisions on team performance rather than individual. So Trixie's groundbreaking return was quickly cut short as she was eliminated once again. At this point, Ginger Minj, even though she had placed 2 times in the bottom 2, delivered some really engaging showcases of why a big portion of her talent resides in her ability to lip sync. Even later on in All-Star 6, she went on to have one of the most celebrated lip syncs in the modern era of the franchise. But try to situate yourself during the airing of this season. To most fans, they were upset that their favorites kept going home one after the other, leading to Katya's elimination during the top 5 Hello Kitty challenge that only created a firestorm within the fanbase, as Katya was pinned by many viewers as the winner of the season. Even Violet Chachki said in an interview shortly after she won that she expected Katya to make the top 3, but that if she had, she would have definitely gotten the crown over Violet. Although one thing that's interesting about this time period is that by the time we look at who makes the top 4, it consisted of 2 established pageant queens with 2 young queens in their early 20s that were bringing a more fashion-forward aesthetic, Violet especially. When we get to the finale of season 7, it was one of the first big jumps in formats in season 4. The idea to have each queen perform their own song that was produced for them created a new separation from seasons past. This was the modern era of the series, which is funny because season 7 is literally about to turn 10 years old now, so currently it's considered a classic season. Anyways, from this point forward, finales weren't just a celebratory moment to crown a winner. It was a slightly extended version of the competition. Essentially, even in this moment of success, the finalists were gonna have to be turning out a show to prove themselves worthy. Now, before we talk about who Rue crowned as the winner of season 7, I wanted to explore something that one of my subscribers brought up, which was that another factor that rose from the airing of season 7 was the fandom that it inevitably attracted. It essentially gave birth to this new wave of aesthetic-centric fans that would eat up anything that a queen displayed, even if some consider it to be more on the basic side, such as the whole bra and panties with no padding conversation, which would end up leading to the Jasmine Masters RuPaul's Drag Race had effed up drag speech. If you want to know more about that, watch this video that I made over a year ago. Trust me, you'll enjoy the ride. It'll be linked in the description. Anyways, part of the rise in the fanbase that would focus on these younger queens' approach to drag aesthetics was that some of them would then villainize the pageant queens because they tended to stick to a rule book in terms of what they thought a true drag queen was. Like, listen, out of the top 3 finalists, the fan favorite, if you believe it or not, was actually Pearl, who was leading on social media platforms in terms of number of likes. Therefore, when it came to track record, Violet was in first place, and when it came to fan support, Pearl was in first place, leaving Ginger Minj as the odd one out, even though she had the second best track record, along with having displayed a lot of great moments in her time competing. That's why when she later returns to All Stars 2, she had a little filter inside of her that was taking acknowledgement at how the fanbase didn't enjoy seeing her pageant side, especially when she was shady towards queens like Violet or Pearl. Now, don't get me wrong, Ginger Minj did have a strong base of supporters that were rooting for her. There was even some minor controversy when Violet Chachki was first announced as the winner. It wasn't a big upset by any means, it was more so that by the time a couple weeks passed, it wasn't exactly all that talked about. Instead, Katya's trajectory in popularity only kept skyrocketing. Mind you, it was so bad that they even did a little gag in the season 7 finale where they pretended to announce Katya as the winner. Violet's reign after winning season 7 was also heavily criticized as not having lived up to the potential that Bianca Del Rio had shown just a year prior with the launch of her international comedy tour. Yet, Violet did go on to accomplish a lot in her own way, especially with networking among important people within the fashion industry. It was just that most of her accomplishments would actually arise in the years after her reign had ended. Although, when it came to Violet Chachki getting into the winner's circle, she's talked about how annoyed she was to constantly have to engage in being a comedy queen when it wasn't something that was her particular area of expertise. That adds a lot of value to her run on every episode, because Violet made it with no bottoms in a season full of her weaknesses, while Ginger made it to the top with 2 bottom placements in a season full of her strengths. People often downplay how well Violet did in season 7. I mean, she was never the worst in any of the challenges, and on top of that, she proved to have an unshakable confidence, being eager to learn and improve not only as a drag queen, but as a person. She literally would constantly show an appreciation and passion for all types of drag. She would never directly discredit someone's drag because it wasn't her thing, something that wasn't quite as obvious with the others. In a sense, it was sort of written all over the walls that Violet was always meant to win. Not only were her ideas such a fresh take on drag, but she always tried 100% at every acting and singing challenge even though she can't act or sing. And most impressive of all, she did it while she was just 21 years old. If anything didn't scream future of drag, I don't know what did. I do sometimes wonder what exactly the editors left out of the final product of the season, because according to a lot of the other queens, Violet was a lot more bratty and shady than we got to see, which is why so many of the other queens had an issue with her. Flash forward to the year 2024 or 2025, depending on when you're watching this, the modern perspective of the fanbase is extremely different from 2015. Essentially, the season has aged like fine wine. We can all admit that yes, there was some terrible choices in terms of challenges or judging decisions, but it still lends itself as an otherwise good viewing experience because we get to see a lot of what would go on to become huge pillars within the drag community. Nowadays, the general consensus is that season 7 wasn't actually all that bad. But why exactly did this happen? My theory is pretty simple. It's not so much that season 7 was actually all that good. It was just that as the years went by, we ended up bearing witness to a lot worse seasons, highlighting that despite the flaws that season 7 had, there was a lot more good attached to it now that we could see what it had managed to do correctly. All in all, I know that moving forward, season 7 will always have a special place in many people's hearts, both from the people that watched it when it was first airing to the people that literally found out about it right now because they were just watching the Trixie and Katya show and finally got curious to see where they came from. But what are your thoughts about season 7? Were you always a fan of it, or did it sort of grow on you like most fans? Let me know in the comments. Thanks again to Raycon for sponsoring today's video. Please click the link in the description to get up to 30% off on the product of your choice. It's worth a shot if you've been thinking about upgrading your earbuds or want to get someone an easy, convenient gift for the holidays. I want to take a moment to thank my patron. In the Elite Pink Squad, we have Matthew Burns, Gay Uncle, Sari Tish, Natasha De Leon, Las Potitas, and Cool Gal Nan. And in the Green Squad, we have Cayman Rider Furry, Edgar Allan Pup, The Only Sean, IJS, Jack Beck, Not a Punch But a Keek, Captain Chaos, Bashir with the Good Beard, Galeria Gomez, Dea, Sarah G, Scarlet Rose, Boiled Peanut, Kimberly Marin, Max Whale, Olivia Marr, and our newest inductees, Alicia and Chloe. If you'd like to see your name on the screen, you can support me on Patreon. The link will be in the description. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and please comment below to help me with engagement. I'll see you guys next time.